So here we define the difference between change in demand and change in quantity demanded. See, when demand changes as a result of the change of the price of the commodity itself, we call that change in quantity demanded. See, so this is change in quantity demanded. When demand for a commodity changes is in response to the change in the price of the good, right? The own price of the good. We call it change in quantity demanded. So in this case, we will have a movement along the same demand curve. So from one point of the demand curve, we will go to another point of the demand curve. And then the other thing we want to say is change in demand. Change in demand, this is when demand changes as a result of change in any of the non-price determinants of demand. So it can be income, it can be taste. We will show you a list of those non-price determinants of demand. So a change in any of those will change demand, and we call that a change in demand. Here price of the product and all the other non-price determinants will remain fixed when just one of those non-price determinants change. See, in this so if price of Coke increases, demand for Pepsi will increase because Coke and Pepsi, they are substitutes. Many people will switch from Coke to Pepsi when Coke become more expensive, right? And in that case, when demand for Pepsi increases, we call that what? We call that a change in demand, right? So in this case, the entire demand curve will shift. Whenever we have a change in demand, the entire demand curve will then shift. See, so a change in any of these non-price determinants will cause a change in demand, which will cause the demand curve to shift. Now, because the consumer will buy more or less of the good given at all possible prices, that is why the entire curve will shift. So if demand increases, so demand curve will shift to the right. If demand decreases, demand curve will shift to the left. Here we present the difference between change in demand and change in quantity demanded in a graph. So you see, when price changes from $4 to $3, demand increases from what? From 3 to 7. So this increase in demand as a result of what? This increase in demand as a result of this change in price from $4 to $3 we call change in quantity demanded. On the other hand, in change in demand, this is where any of the non-price determinants of demand change. When that happens, the entire demand curve will shift. So look at this. We are going from D1 to D2 with this thick increase in demand, with this thick demand curve. So which means that at all price, right, demand will be higher than before because of a change in that non-price determinants. On the other hand, if demand is lower, if because of a change in the non-price determinants, demand is lower than before, so at all possible price, demand is lower, so the demand curve will shift to the left. So we call that decrease in demand. And when demand increases, we go from D1 to D2, we call that increase in demand. These are some examples of the non-price determinants, right? So demand for a commodity depend on these determinants. So change in buyer state. See, physical fitness rises in popularity. So more people become interested in physical fitness. And because of a change in this consumer preference in favor of physical fitness, it will increase the demand for jogging shoes and bicycles. As a result, demand for the demand curve for jogging shoes and bicycles will shift to the right. The next example, cell phone. Popularity rises, right? So consumers, they start to buy more cell phone. And as a result, demand will increase, and then that will what? that will shift the demand curve for cell phones to the right. On the other hand, when consumers buy more cell phone, they use demand for landline will decrease, right? Land phone, they don't use land phone so much anymore. As a result, what? When demand for landline decreases, the demand curve for landlines will shift to the left. The next non-price determinants of demand is what? A decline in the birth rate reduces demand for children toys, right? So birth rate goes down, so less babies are born, and because there are less babies, less children, so the size of the market for children's toys will be smaller, and then demand curve will what? Demand will decrease, and the demand curve will shift to the left. Then change in income. When income increases or decreases, the effect will depend on what type of good this is. So if this is a normal good, when income increases, demand will increase and vice versa. But if it is an inferior good, if income increases, demand will decrease, right? Inferior goods, they are like cheaper brand goods like ramen noodles, generic wine, used cars, used tires. People use more of those when they are poor, but when their income increases, they switch to more expensive items. So the example is a rise in income increases demand for normal goods such as restaurant meals, and then sports tickets, right? Necklaces. So these are normal goods. As a result, demand will increase when income increases, and as a result, demand curve will shift to the right. On the other hand, for inferior goods such as cabbage, turnips, and inexpensive wine, when income increases, demand will decrease. Demand curve will shift to the left. Now the next non-price determinant is change in price of related goods. So if there's a change in price of related goods, like a reduction in airfare reduces the demand for bus transportation. So this is example of substitute goods, right? So if people can travel by air or they can go travel by bus, now if airfare becomes cheaper, people will travel more by air, and then demand for bus transportation will decrease, right? And as a result, the demand curve for bus transportation will shift to the left. Now what about this? The next example is a decline in the price of DVD player increases the demand for DVD movies. Those are complementary goods. Those are goods that are used together. See, DVD player and DVD movies. So if DVD player increases, DVD movie, if demand for DVD player, if DVD player become less expensive, people buy more DVDs, and then they will buy more DVD movies to watch the movies on their DVDs. So as a result, demand for DVD movies will increase, and the demand curve will shift to the right. Now the next thing is consumer expectations. See, inclement weather in South America creates an expectation of future coffee bean prices, higher future coffee bean prices. So when consumers find out that in the future, this is about expectations. In the future, price will increase, they will buy more today. On the other hand, if consumers find out that, hey, in the future price will decrease, then they will buy less today. They will wait until the future comes, price drops, then they will buy more again, right? Then we come to the supply side, right? So supply is the amount producers are willing and able, right? Again, we have those two. The producer has to be willing and able, right, to produce and offer for sale at a given price. That is the supply of a producer at that price. Now again, just as before, we will show you supply schedule and curve, and then you'll see that in the supply curve is positive slope, it's an upslope line. So when which means that when price increases, supply will increase more. And then we will show you individual supply and market supply. So just as before, if you take the supply curve of individual suppliers and horizontally sum the individual supply at each price, you get the market supply curve. Now, law of supply states that as before we make the ceteris paribus assumption, right? Other things remaining unchanged. We'll say that as the price rises, the quantity supplied also rises, and vice versa. So this is a positive relation. This is a direct relationship, right? And in the graph, if we put price on the vertical axis and quantity supplied on the horizontal axis, the curve will be an upslope line. Now, what is the reason for this? Price acts as an incentive to producers. See, higher price means higher profit to the producer, so they will then produce more. And on the other hand, the another reason for the law of supply to hold is what? Costs will rise. When producers start to produce more, they will buy more resources and raw materials to produce more and supply. And at some point, cost of producing goods will increase, right? Costs will rise. So then price needed to cover that higher cost will also increase. So if more supply, higher supply can only come in the end at a higher price. This is the supply schedule. When price is $5, supply is 60. So price is $5, supply is 60. We are here, and price is $4, supply is 50. So this is price is $4, supply is 50 here, and similarly we put all of this. See, again, look at that. This is an upslope line, right? When quantity supply increases, price will also increase. So if you go down this column, price decreases, goes from 5 to 4 to 3. Quantity the supplied also decreased 60, 50 and 35. So it's an inverse relationship. This is a direct relationship, right? Now let us make the difference between change in quantity supplied and change in supply. See, change in quantity supply is when supply increases as a result of the change in price of the product, right? In this case we will have a movement along this same supply curve, right? So if you go back to the previous slide, look, when suppose supply goes from 4 to, price decreases from 4 to 3, right? And as a result, supply decreases from 50 to what? 50 to 35. This decrease in supply we call what? Decrease in quantity supply, right? On the other hand, for change in supply, when any of the non-price determinants change, and that changes supply, we call that a change in supply. So non-price determinants of supply we will soon show you include cost, and then number of producers and several other factors. So when supply changes due to a change in the price, change in any one of the non-price determinants like cost of production, like technology, like number of producers, this is a case. In this case, the entire supply curve will shift. So when supply increases, the curve will shift to the right, and when supply decreases, the curve will shift to the left, right?